Now let's talk about the another services, which is the cloud computing services provided by AWS, which is the EC2 services. So EC2 services provides virtual machines in cloud. Okay. Or maybe if you want to spin up your Docker instances, then you can opt for EC2 instance services. I think there is another service for Docker. I think it's Fargate in AWS. Okay. But for AWS is basically virtual machines. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to, let's say that the web is hosted on EC2 instance, and it is a lightweight app. It doesn't require any resources, right? So AWS offers multiple resource types as well. Yep. So if you want a heavy load machine, you can opt for that. If you want a small load machine, you can opt for that. So that's why, as I said, that AWS is cheap. That's why. Yeah. Because if you want to go for a lower option, you can always go for that.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, that's another thing. It is on-demand billing. So you only pay for the compute that you have used. Okay. Okay. So if your instance is down, you don't have to pay for that. And anytime you can up that instance, and then you have to pay for that. Okay. Pay for the compute time basically. Now let's talk about another service, which is the AWS Instant Metadata Services, which is attached to a EC2 instance. Okay.
Okay.
So this is one of the services which attackers can abuse. Okay. So it allows an EC2 instance to access metadata about the instance itself. So there are like many things that the instance should know, right? What is my network? What is my IP address? Which roles I can assume? These sort of things. So the EC2 instance can query out to this local endpoint, which is the instance metadata endpoint, which is hosted at http://169.254.169/.254/. So this is the endpoint that they can query to access the data, and this is as we can see that the EC2 instance don't have to have the access to the internet. Okay. It can locally access it. Okay. And in this instance data, we have other things as well, as you can see that it has the networking information, instance role credentials, and even user data scripts. So if attacker can access this service, they can query out the networking information,
yes,
role credentials, which have the permissions. God knows what permission which these roles have. Then it also has the user data scripts, in which basically this user data script is the script that will run when a EC2 instance start. Yes. So generally it has the things which like automation things in which we can have the credentials as well. So these are some of the things that you can look for when you have access to the instant metadata service. Yeah, there are two types of instant metadata service. First one is IMDS v1, which is the older version, and then we have IMDS version 2, which is the current version. The older version is vulnerable to SSRF attacks. I think there is a very big breach to one of the companies which happened through this attack, which is SSRF attack. So using the SSRF, this is basically a web attack, right? So using this SSRF, they queried this internal metadata service.
Yes.
Okay, and then they can access the credential of the role, right? Good. So using that, they have breached a very big company. I won't name the company, but it's already publicly available. So using this particular attack, SSRF attack, they can query if there is a website vulnerable to SSRF attacks. Then using that vulnerability, they can query this instant metadata service and get access to all these credentials that are saved.
Okay, and that takes me to our web application courses that are available at training.redfoxsec.com as well. Yeah. And if you want to read more about SSRF, that stands for server-side request forgery. If you want to get more knowledge about it, more information, you can always follow it at training.redfoxsec.com, where you have premium courses as well. But again, there is a lot of content that has been given for free to you as well, so you can always check it out. And again, there's a playlist of Burp Suit that is being played, so you can always check there, and I have personally discussed SSRF attack in that as well, so do have a look. Yeah.
So to protect against these SSRF attacks, So Microsoft updated that IMDS service. Again, as you can see, this is the current version, which is IMDS v2, which is protecting against this SSRF attack. So now you have to require a session token using the put request. So you cannot just directly send a GET request and query this, right? So that's what this IMDS v2 service is. This is comes with the EC2 service. This is basically the EC2 instance. Okay. Yeah, again, let me just go through what we have discussed. I think then we have a practical waiting for us.
Absolutely. The thing that's everyone always waiting for, it's practicals. So, yeah, obviously, I mean, please give the viewers a small recap of all the stuff that we discussed.
So, again, we started off with what is AWS, what are the services offered by AWS. Then we look at why AWS Pentesting is now prevalent because of the misconfiguration that are happening in the client infrastructure that is hosted on AWS. Then we saw the most important service, which is the identity access management service that the learner should know to basically master AWS Pentesting, because this is where all the permission, all the roles, all the authorizations are happening in AWS. Then we looked at the S3 service, which is the storage service provided by AWS. Then we see how this can be secured using access policies. Then finally, we saw the EC2 instance service and how you can use EC2 instance service to spin up your virtual machines on AWS infrastructure. Finally, we saw the instant metadata service, which is a way, which provides a way for the machine to carry about information for itself. Okay. So there are many other services. Maybe in later podcast we will be discussing about all those services as well.
Yes.
As I said, there are hundreds of services provided by AWS.
Yeah.
So major ones are these, which we just saw. So yeah, let's.
Before we jump onto practical, I know you are excited as well as our viewers are excited. But before we jump in, do remember that all of the educational content that is being discussed in this podcast as well as the practicals are for educational purposes only. Please do not try this at your home, work or organization, because in case you get into any trouble, Redfox Security is not responsible for it.